Okay, 339 public sector organization. A public sector organization is extending its budgetary control and responsibility accounting system to all departments. One such department concerned with public health and welfare is called home care. The department consists of staff who visit elderly clients in their homes to support them with their basic medical and welfare needs. A monthly cost control report is to be sent to the department manager, a copy which is also passed to the director who controls the number of departments in the system, which is still being refined. The budget was set by a director and the manager has not been consulted over the budget or the use of the monthly control report. Shown below is the first month's cost control report for home care department. तो ये है विजिट्स जो एक्चुअली बढ़ गए हैं. सुपरवाइजर सैलरी बढ़ गई है. वेजेस मतलब वो विजिट्स के बेसिस पे बढ़ गए होंगे. एक्सपेंसेस है ये सारे. वेजेस कम हो गए हैं. वेजेस ऑफ कैजुअल स्टाफ बढ़ गए हैं. ऑफिस इक्विपमेंट डेप्रीसिएशन वो बढ़ गया है. रिपेयर्स टू इक्विपमेंट कम हो गए हैं क्योंकि डेप्रीसिएशन बढ़ गया तो इक्विपमेंट का रिपेयर्स कम हो गया है. ट्रैवल एक्सपेंसेस ज्यादा है. कंज्यूमेबल ज्यादा है. एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन टेलीफोन एंड एलोकेटेड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव कॉस्ट भी ज्यादा है. In addition to the manager and permanent members of the staff, appropriately qualified casual staff are appointed on a week-to-week basis to cope with the fluctuations in demand. Staff use their own transport and travel expenses are reimbursed. There are central administration overhead charges over all departments. Consumable consists of materials which are used by staff to care for clients. Administration and telephone are costs of keeping in touch with the staff who often operate from their own homes. As a result of the report, the director sent a memo to the manager of the home care department pointing out that department must spend within its funding allocation and that any spending more than 5% above budget on any item would not be tolerated. The director requested all immediate explanation. The director requested an immediate explanation for the serious overspend. You work as an assistant to the directorate management accountant. On seeing the way the budget system was developing, they made a note of the points they would wish to discuss and develop further, but they were called away before these could be completed. Points. A question above budget on any item would not be tolerated. ठीक है. The way the budget was prepared. See, the way the budget was prepared, it was taken into consideration of 1000 visits. ठीक है.
10,000.
Taken into consideration. Oh, sorry, 10,000 visits.
So this budget is not
Monthly
a
control report. It was a monthly
robust.
control report. Monthly cost control report on sent to the department manager on copy, which is passed to director. Cool. Hmm.
Firstly, this budget is not reliable as the budget visits and actual visits are not seen. तो
बराबर.
इसको फ्लेक्स कराना पड़ेगा ना. ये
एक्चुअली
फ्लेक्स
हाँ हाँ हाँ
फ्लेक्स
बराबर है. एक्चुअली ये
हाँ
पता है क्या.
फ्लेक्स.
इन द सिस्टम which is still being
हम्म.
refined, the budget was set by director and the manager who had not been consulted over the budget. तो ये मैनेजर को कंसल्ट करना चाहिए था. Manager had not been consulted over the budget or the use of the monthly control report. A participative budgeting approach should have been adopted.
बराबर.
The comparison, फिर जो पॉइंट तूने बोला ना वो comparison. The comparison is not apples with apples. Thus the visit should be flexed and a flexed budget should be prepared in accordance with the number of visits. इफ सच अ बजट इज प्रिपेयर्ड देन एक्चुअली जो सुपरवाइजर सैलरी है ना वो चेंज हो जाएगा। जैसे जो 10,000 के लिए 2,000 था तो 12,000 के लिए कितना होना चाहिए था। तो एक्चुअली वो 2,400 होना चाहिए था सुपरवाइजर का सैलरी, लेकिन वो 2,125 ही है।
बराबर।
तो दिस इज वन एग्जाम्पल, और ऐसे अपन एक दो और एग्जाम्पल बोल देंगे कि वेजेस और ऐसा के लिए कितना होना चाहिए था, ऐसा एंड सो ऑन। तो ये तो हो गया द
एक
वे
मिनट,
द
ऊपर
बजट।
ऊपर
ऊपर आओ, हाँ बोलना।
वो स्टाफ वाला पॉइंट आगे वाले पॉइंट में डालना है क्या, क्योंकि परमानेंट का कम हो गया एंड कैजुअल स्टाफ इंक्रीज कर दिया वो लोग ने।
Implications of 20% in the implications of a 20% increase in the number of visits, हाँ शायद वो
हाँ
पॉइंट में डाल देंगे सारे सारे का ग्रोथ जो
हाँ
है ना।
हाँ, 20%। 20% बराबर।
बराबर ना। फिर
हम्म
तो इस इम्प्लीकेशन से क्या हो, इम्प्लीकेशन से 20% सारे कॉस्ट भी बढ़ जाएंगे। तो
हम्म
इसके चक्कर में फिर अपन इन सब का ग्रोथ बता देंगे ना 20% से कितना है।
हम्म।
बराबर है। फिर उसके कंपैरिजन
फिर
में
वो
अपन
वाला पॉइंट आ जाएगा ना,
कौन
वो
सा।
नॉट स्पेंडिंग मोर देन 5%।
हाँ वो स्पेंडिंग मोर देन 5% तो अभी नहीं हो पाएगा बिकॉज द नंबर ऑफ विजिट्स हैव इंक्रीज बाय 20%। Thus it is not a actually a good comparison to make, वो तो ठीक है। अभी द एक्सटेंट ऑफ कंट्रोलेबिलिटी ऑफ कॉस्ट, थर्ड पॉइंट। See, there are certain costs which he can control, such as the wages and supervisor's salary. Depreciation is an invisible cost, and it might be a more of a skill. Actually, मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ कि depreciation would be more of a accounting approach in calculating cost, ऐसा मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ, but I don't know वो
अबे
बराबर है।
ऐसा, देख मेरे को क्या लगता है कि रिपेयर उन्होंने कम किया बिकॉज उन्होंने नई मशीनरी या कुछ परचेज किया रहेगा, इसलिए लोगों का डेप्रिसिएशन बढ़ गया रहेगा।
Repairs to equipment might have reduced because of in अच्छा।
हम्म।
हाँ तो ये पॉइंट भी
बिकॉज
अच्छा बोलने लायक है, लेकिन ये अपने को वहां पे नीचे बोलना पड़ेगा कि assumption we have to keep we can assume that there was a new
हम्म
machinery purchased, ऐसा बोल सकते हैं। बराबर। अब जरा सर्टेन एक्सपेंसेस विच ही कैन कंट्रोल, लाइक ट्रैवलिंग एक्सपेंसेस जो है वो कंट्रोल कर तो सकता है वैसे, ट्रैवलिंग एक्सपेंसेस, बट ही कैनॉट कवर, ही कैनॉट control, actually he can control the amount that needs to be reimbursed, but he cannot control the distance or the fare of certain traveling expenses। ये वाला पॉइंट देखना पड़ेगा, कंट्रोलेबिलिटी का
क्योंकि
पॉइंट देखना
हाँ,
पड़ेगा।
क्योंकि क्लाइंट अगर ज्यादा दूर है तो उसको ज्यादा दूर जाना ही पड़ेगा, उसमें कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकता ना उस चीज को।
वही, एक मिनट, कंज्यूमेबल कंसिस्ट ऑफ मटेरियल विच आर यूज्ड बाय स्टाफ टू केयर फॉर क्लाइंट्स। क्या ऐसा होती है कि ये कोई मेडिकल फॉर्म है क्या। नहीं ना। अच्छा
नहीं मतलब वो,
कि हाँ हाँ, बोल बोल।
नहीं नहीं, तो जो
मैं बोल रहा था कि जैसे wages have increased, so if these increase in wages is due to increased number of staff, then those increased number of staff might have used certain consumables that have gone wasted while taking care of the elderly people. However, there will be a learning curve effect that
ओके
there will be a learning curve effect that the new staff to be assumed to be new staff might fall in place, and thus the future wastage of consumables might not take place।
ओके।
तो consumables
बट
ना,
ये लर्निंग का था, तूने क्या बोला, अगर वापस रिपीट कर।
देख अगर मैं क्या बोल रहा था कि समझ अगर लोग, अभी मैंने यहाँ पे कैसे उस चीज को लाया कि देख वेजेस जो है कैजुअल स्टाफ का वो एकदम बढ़ गया है, बराबर है। वो 20% से भी
हम्म
नहीं बढ़ा है, वो तो 20% से उल्टा और ज्यादा बढ़ा है।
हम्म।
So, if this assumption is taken into consideration that new staff has been appointed, then that new staff might have might during the taking might यार इसको कैसे यार
might take more
might
time ना,
taking might taking
rather than usually.
नहीं नहीं नहीं, मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ कि ये जो नया स्टाफ है इन्होंने इनकी देखभाल
हम्म,
करते समय might have used certain materials in excess or certain consumables might have gone wasted, because of which uh, there has been an increase in the consumables or substantial increase in the consumables, क्योंकि तू अगर देखेगा तो consumables बढ़े हैं 150% से। consumables have
ये
increased
वो
by 150%।
learning,
एक्चुअली वो खाली 20% से बढ़ने चाहिए थे।
नहीं नहीं नहीं, वो सही है,
This
बट वो लर्निंग का कहाँ पे काम आता है जहाँ पे रेपिटेटिव या फिर एक लेबर वाइज ही चलता है, ये तो
हाँ हाँ,
वो है ना स्टाफ
इसलिए
केयर का,
पूछा,
तो यहाँ पे देखो
इसलिए
सेंस नहीं बना
मैंने
रहा है
पूछा
लर्निंग का।
कि ये जो वेजेस है, ये देखना ये सॉरी ये जो वेजेस है ये तो उन लोगों के हैं, और ये देखना कंज्यूमेबल्स कंसिस्ट ऑफ मटेरियल्स विच आर यूज्ड टू बाय स्टाफ टू टेक केयर ऑफ क्लाइंट्स।
हम्म,
तो ऐसा मैं बोल रहा हूँ।
ठीक है,
ठीक है,
देखते हैं।
देखते हैं।
हम्म,
इम्प्लीकेशंस ऑफ फंडिंग एलोकेशन। फंडिंग एलोकेशन के ऊपर क्या बोलेगा यार? As a result of the report, the director sent a memo to the manager of the home care department pointing out that the department must spend within its funding allocation. नहीं, अब तो फंडिंग एलोकेशन के ऊपर ही जाएगा। And now the spend is not just 5% more, it is more, मतलब it is more than 20%. Thus a reasonable explanation can be given to the director for this overspend.
ये ओवर स्पेंड में वो वाला पॉइंट नहीं आएगा जो ऊपर वाला,
कौन सा?
जो ऊपर सब सेकंड पे रहेगा आपके लिए? ऊपर जा, एक मिनट। हाँ, ये जो तूने हाईलाइट किया ना, मैनेजर नॉट बीइंग कंसल्टेड फॉर द मंथली
Manager
रिपोर्ट वाला।
should be consulted, हाँ manager should be consulted while preparing a budget. Actually ये जो फर्स्ट और लास्ट फोर्थ पॉइंट है ना, ये थोड़ा सा कंबाइन करना पड़ेगा, मतलब थोड़ा सा सेम लिखना पड़ेगा।
हम्म,
सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स एंड एनी अदर पॉइंट्स यू थिंक आर अप्रोप्रिएट। अरे भाई इधर ही हमारे लगे पड़े हैं। अच्छा कैलकुलेशन भी पता नहीं है, देख कैलकुलेशन अगर हुआ तब तो 40%, तो ये कैलकुलेशंस तो इन सब का
हाँ
ग्रोथ ही
ठीक है, ये
बता
अपने,
देंगे।
हाँ ग्रोथ बता देंगे कि कितना क्या हुआ है।
फ्लेक्स्ड का वैसे सब बता देंगे।
क्योंकि सोशल की मेरे को लगता नहीं कुछ और पॉइंट बचा है अपने।
हम्म। अदर पॉइंट्स में क्या हो सकता है? अदर पॉइंट्स लिखना तो फिर ऊपर के पॉइंट्स एक दो कम करने पड़ेंगे और क्या।
नहीं, कंट्रोल सी कंट्रोल नहीं है यार ये तो।
चल आजा देख लेते हैं।
टेलीफोन।
बजट प्रिपरेशन तू पढ़ेगा, मैं जरा दूध पी लेता हूँ।
हाँ, एक मिनट।
यस यस, टेक योर टाइम।
ओके, तो क्वेश्चन क्या था उसका? हाँ वही था, ठीक, डिस्कस वाला। बजट प्रिपरेशन, सबसे फर्स्ट पॉइंट। It would be in line with the principle of modern management if the department manager was encouraged to participate more in setting the budget. In his way, they would be more likely to show commitment of the organization goals in general and budget in particular. They are close to the activities for which the budget is prepared, and so relevance and accuracy of the budget should be improved. The involvement should extend also to the discussion of the form and frequency of the reporting which is to take place for their department. Okay, हाँ मतलब involving the managers in the participative budget, ठीक है। Second, activity volume। अच्छा, वैसे ही था क्या क्वेश्चन?
एक्चुअली इन्होंने कैसे बताया
ओके, हाँ।
इसको? अच्छा इन्होंने वही पॉइंट्स को और छोटा किया है, ठीक है ठीक है।
इम्पैक्ट ऑन अपना वो 20% इंक्रीज इन नंबर ऑफ विजिट था, तो ये इसमें एक्टिविटी वॉल्यूम।
हम्म।
Overall actual cost was 19,000, have exceeded budget cost 15,000 by 4,000, which is 28.5%, higher than budget. On the face of it, this seems like poor performance against budget. However, there are some important considerations to consider in relation to the number of visits. Okay, हाँ बराबर. The volume of the visit undertaken is 20% greater than the budgeted. It is inappropriate to compare with the actual cost of visiting 12,000 clients with a budgeted of 10,000. Costs such as wages, traveling expenses, consumable are likely to be variable and or have a vari- variable
Variable.
or have a variable element. So would be expected to be higher than the fixed cost in the circumstances. On way to deal with this is to adjust or flex the budget to acknowledge the cost implication of the higher number of visits or to be aware of when making any comparison. If a factor is 1.2 is applied to overall wages budgets for permanent and casual on the assumption that it is variable. The flex budget 5,000 जो उन्होंने कैलकुलेट किया है, क्या कैलकुलेट किया है, जरा एक मिनट. ओके हाँ ये वेजेस कैलकुलेट किए लोगों
The
ने
total wages
कैजुअल्स के
calculate
और
किए.
हाँ greater than the actual. Okay, actual SADA. Taking a similar approach to travel expense consumable, actual travel expense हुआ था exactly in the same line with budgeted 1,800, but the consumable cost of 6,000 seems to be highly overspent. वही 1.2%, 1.2 से. Uh, to circulate a report as originally constructed seems like a highlight and publication some invalid comparison from which inappropriate conclusion may be drawn. It is recommended that for cost control purpose, a report is prepared which compares actual spending with a flex budget. Actual spending with a flex budget. Actual spending with a flex budget on actual activity. हाँ, जो हम starting में बोल रहे थे.
Hmm.
This would require an estimate of variable, fixed, and semi-variable nature of the cost. बराबर.
BA.
फिर ये controllability. It is possible to question whether all costs should. एक मिनट उसमें उसका क्या था heading? Extent of controllability. Okay. It is possible to question whether all costs should need to be featured in the report. For example, allocated administration costs and equipment depreciation are entries. Are book entries. They do not directly affect the department. Are not likely to be controllable by employees of the department. There are therefore adverse variances on report contribution to the overall overspend that are not the responsibility of the department manager. Allocated administration costs are 50% higher than budgeted. Okay, allocated the cost is 50% higher. Okay, and account for 22.7% of overspend based on fixed budget. अच्छा जो हमारे फिक्स बजट से 22.75 से ज्यादा हमने ये खर्चा कर दिया. The difference between actual and budgeted cost of administration serves no useful purpose or in this report because the manager can take no action to influence this directly. The only justification to include this is if the manager can bring about some pressure to reduce the spending by someone else. Sorry, एक minute. The only justification to include is this if the manager can bring about some pressure to reduce this spending by someone else. मतलब वो अपने स्टाफ पे किसी पे प्रेशर डाले ताकि वो कॉस्ट रिड्यूस करे, यही मतलब है ना.
Hmm.
ठीक है. It may be unwise to adopt a guide of 5% deviation to adjust the variation. The key is whether is a cost is out of control can be corrected by managerial action. Also, 5% of the values can be significantly displaced on other. 5% of the cost might be a little consequence. हाँ, बराबर. फिर नेक्स्ट क्या है? implications on of the funding allocation.
Hmm.
The director is correct in pointing out the department must live within its funding allocation. However, it is not like a commercial organization where more output can result in more revenue. बराबर है सही है सही है. Hence, more money to spend. Increased funding will only be achieved if the organization department is allocated more funds as a result of national or local government decisions to support to an increase in services. It would be appropriate for the funding allocation to be compared with the flexible budget based on actual activity. बराबर. To encourage all managers to be aware of and live within a budget allocation, ways can always be found to spend more money. So authority struggles must be in place to ensure that requests to spend have been budgeted.
Being budgeted and approved.
एक मैडम. Ways can always be found to spend more money. अच्छा हाँ, so authority structure must be placed to ensure request. अच्छा हाँ, मतलब कुछ भी खर्चा करने से पहले रिक्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा.
हाँ.
Have been budgeted an appropriate fund. Hence, the organization arrangement which authorized the increased visits could be examined. The nature of the activities for which budget is being developed should not be lost sight of. It is more complex to deal with budget decisions related to welfare needs of society than those of the typical manufacturing firm. There are no clear inputs and output relationship in the former, and hence it is difficult to judge what is justifiable spending of the department compared with the other department, public sector organizations. Okay. फंडिंग का अपन ने कहीं ना कहीं सही बोला था कि, लेकिन बाद में वाला भी कि वहां पे कैप
हम्म.
लगाना चाहिए, परमिशन,
चेक करने
फिर
चाहिए.
गवर्नमेंट का इन्वॉल्वमेंट. सॉरी.
चेक करना चाहिए.
हाँ, चेक करना चाहिए. ठीक है, अभी लास्ट का जो अपना ग्रे एरिया था, सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स एंड एनी अदर पॉइंट्स यू मेट अप्रोप्रिएट. Social and other aspects. One possible outcome from decision over the appropriate form of report would be use of a non-financial measure by the
हम्म.
total staff worked, client satisfaction, size of the potential client population are example of the extension to the reporting procedure, which would help to place the result in context. The
Right.
style of the approach the style of the approach should adopted by director may show some lack of behavior insights. The the dispatch of the memo or to deal with the prototype report may result in low staff morale and increased tension in the home care department. This may lead to inappropriate future decision on spending and budget game playing with the department. It may, of course, be a conscious decision of the director to place the manager in the position of having to reduce spending of the allocated level.
हम्म.
All through, this is the first month report. In the future, it may be helpful to use an additional column of the report to show year-to-year figure. This would help to identify trends and assist in discussion of whether cost being controlled over the longer term. To show future results for only 1 month may be insufficient. For example, the repair of equipment may not follow a regular pattern. This would be relevant if the cumulative data is accurate.
Identify trends after assessment.
हाँ, ये बहुत सही आंसर है.